So, hello everyone, and welcome to Monday Motivation. Today, the title is Taming the Voice in Your Head. This is another one of my favorite topics. I would expect I'm not the only one who has dealt with the voice in your head. We'll get started. All right, so have you ever felt like the loudest voice you hear is your own? It's the one in your own head. I know, I kind of chuckle because it happens to all of us, especially during difficult times, trauma. This can really be an issue for us. So, what story are you telling yourself? And does that story limit your ability to thrive or to find happiness or joy? Hi, friends. I'm Terry Stirk. If we haven't met before, I am a two-time thriver of triple negative breast cancer. I'm now 12 years out, living my purpose as a wellness coach and author. I I don't know why I survived cancer, but I did. And I asked myself that question, and that gave me the purpose that I'm living now, and that's to support other women who are dealing with cancer or other traumas in their lives. I still have a lot to learn, but I have learned a lot over these years, and I want to continue to do that and motivate you and inspire you. So let's be real. Most of us, we don't need someone else to criticize us. We've got a constant voice in our own head that's doing that job just fine. Mine used to be relentless. It judged every choice. It replayed every mistake. It made even the quiet moments feel noisy. So today I want to talk about how I learned to tame that voice, but I didn't shut it down. And we'll talk about that as well. We can't shut it down completely. Sometimes it's telling us good things, things we need to stop and think about. But we can stop it from running the show. We can take more control over that voice. So we'll talk about that story that you're telling yourself and how to overcome the limitations it places on you. I'll share the tools that help me to do it, to tame that voice without losing myself in the process. So, first of all, is recognizing the voice and being in control of it a little more. So, when you feel it or hear it or see it, however you want to phrase that, the first shift happened when I realized that inner voice is not always telling the truth. Sometimes it's making up things. Oftentimes, it's not the truth. I leaned on a book, 10% Happier by Dan Harris. It's an old book. It's at least 10 years old, maybe more. But it's one I've had for a very long time, and I used it during my own healing process. But Dan says it like this: we are all just one breath away from a completely different perspective. So, what does he mean by that? That statement has really stuck with me, realizing that what's happening in this moment can be better in the next moment. It reminded me that even when my inner voice is loud and critical, I can stop, take a breath, and choose a different path. One rooted in peace rather than pressure or stress. The voice repeats things from our past. It tells us that we're falling behind or the story is different than we remember. Sometimes we make it even worse than it really was. Who knows? Our story does a lot of things to us. The brain is an amazing thing that we should never give up, that we're not enough, or it can tell us how we should be better by now. But why are we still dragging behind? I carried so much stress and anxiety because I thought I had to believe that voice or fix it myself until it went away. But that's what I've learned, and I want to share with you today. You can notice the voice, but that doesn't mean you have to obey it. Do what it says. It's not always telling you the truth. So, what actually helped me? So, let me walk you through some of the biggest tools that made a difference for me. And these are things you can try too. And they're not, it's not rocket science. It's all things that we probably know about. But the book by Dan Harris helped me in those days, 10 years ago. It helped me a lot. He recommends mindfulness and meditation, and I do too. And so I appreciate that he brings that to the forefront as the number one tool to use to help tame that voice in your head. I know meditation can sound intimidating, but as Dan Harris describes in his book, it is such a practical way. He says that mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. So what he's saying there is that if you're mindful, then you can listen to your head. But so often our head is just noisy and stirring a pot. But if we're mindful about what's happening in our head, then we can take charge. That helped me. I didn't need to clear my mind. I just needed to notice what was going on in there and address it. So I started small with my meditation, 5 minutes a day, just learning how to breathe in and sit silent for a while without any distractions, breathing in and breathing out, focused on my breath, not trying to stop the thoughts, but just watching them as they appear. Now I enjoy guided meditation. I like another voice talking to me that helps calm my brain, allowing me to focus on the other voice rather than my own. And slowly the volume of that harsh voice started to lower. I was able to take better control of my own thoughts. You can find numerous videos on YouTube to help guide you in meditation. Just try one. If you don't like it, then keep going. Find another voice that you like. One of my favorites is Yoga by Adriene. Adriene has hundreds, probably thousands of videos on YouTube, yoga videos. She also has some meditation videos. So you could just search under Yoga by Adriene meditation, and you'll find some options. The second is journaling. This is another one of my favorite tools. Journaling the truth. If I hear you messed up again and then your brain is spiraling, I started writing down what I knew was true. yeah, maybe I did mess up, but I can think about how to correct that now. So I kept journals throughout my two cancer journeys, as well as every other traumatic experience that I've dealt with in my life, whether it was death of my parents, estrangement with family members. Um, there's all kinds of things that happens to us in our lives. But I'd ask myself, would I talk to a friend this way? That question alone helped me speak more kindly to myself and to recognize that the voice in my head was not always me. It was it was the negative thoughts that were running through my head. Sometimes I write, "You're doing your best. You showed up. You're learning from your mistakes." That might sound simple, but it began healing the inner damage caused by years of self-criticism. Journaling is most effective when you write without thinking. Don't worry about perfect grammar or sentence structure. Just write from your heart. Sometimes I call it, I need a brain dump, and I'll take out my journal and a pen and I'll just sit there and write everything that I'm thinking about. And many times I can come up with solutions when there's problems I'm dealing with if I'm just writing about it, writing those thoughts on paper. Then I can come back to it later, which is always helpful also. I could let them go. By writing them down, I empty my brain of the thoughts, and if necessary, deal with them later. I still have all those journals, and I use them quite frequently to look up things, that maybe I've forgotten about. A lot of that things I'm talking about today were things that I'm pulling out of my journal. The third tool is spiritual anchoring, at least that's what I call it. That's the other part of us as human beings. We all have a spirit. Whether, for me, that's God. I'm a Christian and I do focus on God and as my spiritual anchor. But you may have another religion or maybe no religion at all. Um, but you still have a spirit, something that anchors you. So when I'm overwhelmed, I ask, what is mine to carry today? If I have so much going on, then what is my priority? That one question helps ground me, and it reminds me that I'm not alone. I don't need to control everything. Many times I use my journal to talk to God by writing my prayers. Sometimes that's easier for me than speaking or thinking them, especially when my mind is overwhelmed and spiraling. So, finding your spiritual anchor is the third way to help that voice in your head. It doesn't get the final say. And sometimes you just need a prayer to pass it away, pass it to God. The fourth tool is creating space. I used to think I had to get rid of the voice, but in the book, 10% Happier, Dan introduced me to a better idea. It wasn't to get rid of the voice, it was just don't get hooked by it. He talks about noticing the inner weather report, he calls it. Some days your thoughts are stormy, and that's okay. You don't have to become the storm. You can just observe it, follow it a little bit, understand what's happening there, and then let it pass, let it move on. Focus on something else. When you learn to be intentional about noticing what's going on in your head, and that's what meditation or journaling help you do, then you're able to observe it, let it pass, and understand what you're thinking about. That insight changed the way I handle my anxious days. I stopped taking my thoughts so personally or seriously. So let me be honest, I still have days when that inner voice, takes over or tries to take over. But now I know how to respond. I have the tools that I can come back to. I don't fight with that voice. I don't follow it down every rabbit hole it tries to take me down. I pause, I breathe, and I tell myself the truth. And most importantly, I remember that my value was never up for debate anyway. No matter what other people say or what the world says, I am me. I'm a child of God unapologetically. And Dan Harris says you can't control what comes into your head, but you can control what you do next. That's the freedom I want for all of you. You don't need to erase your thoughts. You just need to know how to class them or how to choose which ones you act on, which ones you want to just let go. And the tools that I've talked about will help you do that. So today, I encourage you to try a 3-minute breathing break where you just sit silently and breathe and see what comes up in your head. Also, start journaling a bit. Write down a kind truth about yourself, especially if the inner critic is pushing you negatively. Ask your higher power, what is mine to carry today? Sometimes you're taking on a lot of problems from other people, and it's really not you that's overwhelmed. It's everyone else's demands on you. So I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you can do today to tame that inner critic before it gets too loud? I'd love to hear your feedback. Sometimes it's great first thing in the morning to sit quietly, have your cup of coffee, stare out the window or sit on your porch. But you're just taking time, making space to be quiet and to silence your brain a bit. It's not perfection. There's nobody saying you have to be perfectly silent or perfect. You just need to remember you are more than that voice in your head. Now, I've talked a lot about this book because it was so helpful to me during my healing journey. And I have a summary of additional quotes from Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier, and I have found them to be very helpful in my healing. So I'll include a link if you'd like a copy of your own. It gives you some pointers from the book, or if you want to get the book yourself. As always, I'm cheering you on. Have a great Monday. Goodbye.